It's actually quite traditional in Buddhist contexts, in traditional Buddhist contexts, especially in the Tibetan tradition, to lay out stages of the path. This is actually a very important genre of literature in the Tibetan tradition. So I suppose in a sense what we are doing here is translating this into our own context and our own needs and the needs of our students as we understand them as a bridge, really, to making a connection between what can work for you as practitioners and what also draws on the wisdom of many, many centuries of traditions that we ourselves have been inspired by and that we, in fact, practice. So that is our purpose, to look at, how do you begin a practice? What kinds of obstacles might you pretty much expect will occur? What kinds of challenges will occur? How might you deal with those challenges? How can the community of practitioners help you with that? How can reading help you with that? How can the teachers, Harvey and myself, and our visiting teachers, how can they help you with the path? The path is not something that we do alone. That's actually always been true in Buddhist traditions and really in all spiritual communities that we can easily bring to mind. We know that community is very, very important. People come together in church, in temples, in synagogues, in Quaker meetings, in sports. There's which is a kind of religion. There is really a strong human impulse to gather together. And when it comes to practice, that is actually something quite important. And something of a challenge, because a lot of us are loners, one way or another. And personally, we may be, and also our culture kind of induces Lone Ranger ideologies in everyone. And so coming together is already a step toward being part of something larger, which is actually a central principle in spiritual practice, and perhaps in growth of all kinds, to become part of something larger. So we're very happy to be able to be discussing this with you today. And we want to set the scene, as it were, the inner scene for this, the outer scene for this, by taking a few minutes to sit silently with you. And also we'll begin, for reasons you may not come to understand slowly, we'll begin with singing of the Refuge and Bodhicitta verses, which are on, is it page 12? Is it page 12 that they're on? Yes, okay. So, and there's a group upstairs, just so we acknowledge that. There's a group upstairs, they're doing something else, and that's what we're hearing. They'll be leaving at noon. So take a moment to find your posture, your alignment, we always say. Your sense that you are right now seated directly above the center of the earth. It's not an article of faith, it's actually true. You are seated directly above the center of the earth. And in an important sense, you are actually receiving support from the center of the earth. The opportunity and capacity to receive support at this level, just at the level of your body, is actually quite significant. It's something that in time allows us to be more at ease and actually to feel an inner strength because we feel supported. So allow yourself to feel supported by your cushion, by your chair, and feel that support coming from the center of the earth. You want a lot of support for your life. We all do. A lot of support for a path of practice also. So as you feel into that, you may notice that just spontaneously there's some possibility for relaxation. The bottom of your body, you may just feel that you're actually allowing your seat to support you. And there's a natural alignment that we like to be aware of from the center of the earth to the bottom of your spine, to the center of your abdomen. It's a very strong support to begin to feel even that alignment. Continuing to your heart, your throat, your crown. So this central corridor in alignment, present at the core of your body, is actually a source of great strength. And you may or may not feel present to it at this time. But you can have some acknowledgement that it's there, this central alignment. Feel into that for a bit.
Maybe during the break.
And as you're present to your alignment, of course, you're continuing to breathe. And you may even notice how fluidly, limpidly and flowingly your breath comes in and moves out. And actually the alignment of the central core within you allows for this easier flow of movement. And this too is supportive of your practice and of your ease in life. So you're simply sitting and breathing without any expectation that anything particular is going to happen or should happen. You're just breathing. And you can place your attention on your breath and let your attention rest gently on your breath. So you are aware as your breath moves in, down through your body. And you are aware when it feels right to let the breath go. And that relaxation that comes when you release your breath. And that's all we're doing. It's just being aware how your breath comes in, what it feels like, how it feels. Your breath goes out, and you feel how that feels. And whenever you notice that your attention has gone elsewhere, which it's bound to do, as soon as you notice that, you bring it back to your breath. And you do this as many times as you notice it moving away. There's no upper limit, nothing like that. So just be present to your breath for a few minutes. Coming back to your breath again and again whenever your attention has gone elsewhere. That's your whole job right now, nothing else. Your presence to your breath and awareness of the sensations associated with it is an expression of your mind's clarity. Your awareness that your attention has wandered and bringing it back is also an expression of your mind's clarity. Allow this very clarity to take form as an orb of light at the center of your heart. Not your physical heart, but the center of your chest. And in the center of this orb of light is the letter Om, which is the expression of clarified or enlightened embodiment. We're going to sound the sound Om 3 times. So now your attention is there with the light and the sound as they expand from the center of your heart, expand to every cell and part of your body. Just that. So your attention, like the sound and light, is expanding from your heart center to include your entire body. And just notice how you are right now. Without needing it to be any particular way, just how you are right now. And if you're feeling well, how nice if such a state could continue. If you're not feeling well in some way or other, how nice if that could be relieved. Maybe you're feeling both those things together. It's really ordinarily how we are. We want something that isn't yet, or we want to continue what is. And in our practice, we name a resource which can help further what we like and help us slowly over time dissolve what is unwanted. We call this a place of refuge. And really all living beings seek refuge, however they understand it. Birds make nests. Field mice bury underground. Humans build houses. We want refuge. And we can express this possibility of refuge as an orangish orb of light in space in front of you. And it's a refuge because it is endowed and actually luminous with all the qualities of goodness and kindness and wisdom and healing presence that you could ever seek as ultimate refuge. If you're familiar with Guru Rinpoche, then the appearance is as Guru Rinpoche. And so you're here with your own longing for refuge, however you understand that. Maybe right now you understand it as a good job, a better relationship, better health, more friends. However you understand it, part of the path is to deepen our understanding of what we seek as refuge. But right now, however you understand it, it's this orange orb of light, a luminous Lama, if you will. And you are here recognizing your own yearning for refuge. And your father and your mother and your friends and all your pets and actually all enemies even, and in the end every living being in the entire universe is sitting with you, gazing as you do at this luminous expression of refuge. And you are leading the entire multitude with this expression. We have a traditional expression of it, which is on page 12 of your booklet. So if you want to just sit in that state, you can. Those of us who know, and if you'd like to join, we'll sing it in English, Tibetan and English, on page 12. If you'd like to sing, sing. If not, just stay present to whatever your sense of refuge is. In 3 real jewels, 3 root bliss-filled ones, channels, winds, bright orbs, this Bodhi mind, essence, nature, moving love mandal, until full Bodhi I seek refuge. Kunjok sum ngade shek zawa sum, zalung tigle rang shing chanchup sem, ngo rang shing tu che gingor la, chanchup ning ve vardu chap suchi. In three real jewels, three root bliss-filled ones, channels, winds, bright orbs, this Bodhi mind, essence, nature, moving, love, mandal, until full Bodhi I seek refuge. And in response, streams of light pour down from this luminosity. And as soon as these streams of light touch you and all the multitudes with you, touched by light, you dissolve into light, and as light, melt up into the luminous Lama, the luminous orb itself, uniting your mind with a state coalescing all wisdom, all compassion, all goodness. And abiding as this luminosity in space, the light that you are begins to dissolve in towards its center, your center, until the last heart drop of luminosity itself melts into space. And when thoughts again arise, everything appears just as before. And we consider that just as we want refuge, so all living beings want the happiness of refuge. And we express an intention to practice, to bring about the real happiness of all beings, including ourselves. And so again, and we state this intention in the luminous presence of the luminous Lama, who is actually present to us, kindly attending to us. And again, if you'd like to sit with that, sit with that. If you'd like to sing, we'll sing it's called the Bodhicitta verse, the intention to develop to benefit all beings, on page 12. Oh, like moons in water, sights deceive us, we ever roam bound in cyclic chains. So all may rest in their clear mind sphere, I raise Bodhi through four boundless states. Ho nazo nangwa chu de tsun reiji, kor walugu jundu jamvedro, rang rega sel ying sung ao se cheer, tseme shi ying hang ne sem je do. Oh, like moons in water, sights deceive us, we ever roam bound in cyclic chains. So all may rest in their clear mind sphere, I raise Bodhi through four boundless states. And in response, the luminous Lama, this luminous orb, dissolves into light, streams into your heart-mind, and melts completely with all those qualities of loving intention, kindness, deep spiritual ease. All of this now unifies with your own mind. Just stay in that for a minute, and Harvey and I will sing an additional invocation. Kyabda gyalwanam tang yer me pe, gandrin sumden tinchen lama che, rizin jor me tupten chatsola, so adep sunyamlen tarchin sho. And take a moment now just to see how you are, not trying to do or hold any particular state at all. Just notice how you are. Maybe it's different from when you sat down first. Just notice it. Stand next to her. So that is an introduction to some of the elements of practice. Some of them, as you can see, for example, the cultivation of attention that we did through resting on your breath. This is a skill that's very significant for anything in life, in practice. And perhaps you tasted already also that when you have the intention to rest your mind on your breath, when you have the intention for your attention to be steady and present, what happens? Did your mind listen exquisitely? I can decide to put my hand over here and I'm pretty likely to be successful, right? But when I decide to put my mind over here, well, it's got a mind of its own, in fact. And so one of the first things we learn as practitioners, and frankly, all of us learn this over and over and over again. It's not a one-time thing. Practice is not a one-time thing by nature. What we learn is that we can't actually assure ourselves of any particular outcome when we sit down. Some of you are quite new, I think, to this practice. Some of you are longtime practitioners. All of us either are learning or know that it's actually a very essential truth about practice that it's not up to you what occurs in practice. You have an intention to develop attention. What that means is that you're going to confront your distraction. So it's kind of like not truth in advertising. We say we're cultivating, but actually it's deep truth in advertising. We say we're cultivating attention. And as you'll see in our curriculum, that's really the first skill that we attend to as practitioners, the cultivation of attention. It's one thing that we say, since you don't have it in front of you, I'll quote. Some of our programs emphasize life skills, such as developing calm, focus, a capacity to give and receive kindness. Now, these are not articles of faith, uniquely of spiritual traditions. They are, of course, profoundly consonant with, I think, all spiritual traditions. They are also, we also can think of them as life skills. So some of you perhaps are coming to, you want to develop a practice, or at least you want to know what it might be like to develop a practice, therefore you're here. So one thing that's important for you to do as we discuss, and we may want to give you some time actually to reflect specifically on this, is what do you want from practice? Why is it that you want a spiritual path? Or maybe you don't even think of it as a spiritual path. Maybe you think of it as a set of skills that you want. What are those skills that you want? And why do you want them? That's actually quite important. As you've seen, even just from our meditation this morning, there are different skills and there are different practices. Some involve the focusing of attention, which is what I'm going to talk about mainly for the next few minutes. There's also the cultivation of compassion, very, very significant. We just mentioned it when we said we're singing this verse because we're bringing to mind our attention to practice to benefit all beings. Now, that may or may not be your intention right now, right? But at least you know that it's out there as an intention that you could cultivate. You know already that practice can involve sound. Not all practices do. Some practices really are very much engaged with sound. If you come to our 11 o'clocks on Sundays, you know that we alternate between a silent cultivation of attention and cultivating attention through sound. Sound is very helpful, very supportive in practice. Some people feel, including maybe some of you, I don't know, why can't I just sit still? I just want to be quiet. My life is noisy enough. You may feel that way, and it will be your truth. If you feel that way, we want you to notice that you feel that way. Because behind every practice that we do is an invitation to notice how it's impacting you, to get to know yourself. How does a practice impact you? Does it make you feel more solitary and alone, albeit quiet and relaxed? Does it make you feel like your heart wants to open? Does it make you feel really grumpy? Like there's something seriously wrong with you? Because unlike everyone else in the room who is a paragon of perfect stillness and compassion, you alone are beset by all kinds of ogres and nasty thoughts like, I don't want to do this. Okay? So, if you want to relax, for example, and that is often why people initially, or you want some order in your life, you want some deeper meaning in your life, you want to open your heart, you want to get to know yourself, these are all quite different purposes. And you may find that you have, especially as time goes by, you have a kind of laundry list of things that you want out of practice. So I'm inviting you to think about this now, because there's always something going on in the back of your mind, right, as you're listening. So let this be what goes on in the back of your mind, and we'll give you a little time to write this down, too. We're going to... Great success. The secret has been... Thank you. We have a lot of wisdom in is continuing to be revealed. Okay. Okay, so let that just come into your lap. You don't have to read it right now. Just feel that your request for, I don't know, information, if that was part of your refuge, you're getting it. So knowing what you want out of practice is important because that will help your teachers, your community, understand what is suitable for you to emphasize. Now, there is a kind of trajectory. It's not like, you know, when you go, let's say, to kindergarten or first grade, you are, you know, there's certain things that they're going to teach you. It's not all about what you think you want. However, it is very good, even as a kindergartner or a first grader, to consider, why are you in kindergarten? Why are you there? Why are you going to school? Maybe mom and dad didn't ask you, but there's a lot of implicit wanting in the air when you go to school. You know that you're going there to be trained in a certain way. You know that you're going there because you're going to learn skills that are going to help your life. You know that you're going there because it's the law, and you have to go also. And when you go there, you find that there are other kids your age that you can play with, and that, in fact, it can be fun. And that sometimes it's not fun, but it's challenging, and you realize that you're learning things and that you get to do things that you wouldn't otherwise get to do. And that there's an order. When you see the big kids, do you remember how big 8th graders looked when you were in kindergarten? I do. They were just giants. They were just, somehow I went out by the wrong door when we were going, on the way home or at lunch hour or something like that. And so I had to go back. This is the only door that I could get into at that time, and I had to go back in as everybody else, the upperclassmen, were coming out. Oh, my God. They just looked so huge. And I knew that I was in some, although it seemed quite unbelievable that I would ever be that big, But at some level, I knew, just like we all knew when we were in kindergarten, that we're headed there. We're headed toward growing up, and we're learning how to do it. And that's very much the same is true in terms of the stages of the path, the phases of the path, as we're calling them. We are moving through phases, and with the intention of developing, getting more robust, more capable, and we are going to inevitably encounter, if it wasn't a challenge, we wouldn't have to come together and have a curriculum. We would just send out e-notes or post on Facebook, watch your breath today. And which is actually what some people do. There are electronic sanghas, digital sanghas. But what we see is that this trajectory of development is something that is really quite wonderful and exciting and challenging, and that it takes time. It takes time. This is a really important thing to understand from the beginning. I think when we're young as a practitioner or young in any context, we're very impatient. At least I know I was always very impatient. Like perhaps some of you, I took pre-ballet. Where were the toe shoes? I wanted them immediately. And then they said, you're 9 years old or whatever, and you have no experience, and it will break your feet if you I think I even bought toe shoes. I wanted them so much. But it's not good for you. And in fact, you can't do anything with them. So somehow we understand this in sports, dance, school. You don't expect to go to a geometry or trig class, right, until you've learned the multiplication table. You don't feel like your teacher is pandering to you or not respecting your, potential because you got to learn the alphabet before, they'll give you a book to read on your own. It makes sense to us, right? Somehow, when it comes to the spiritual path, people feel and expect, bingo, it should just all fall into place like this. I should be at the whatever phase 4 is. I want it now. I'm particularly talented, actually. And, this is what I should be at. And I see these other people who don't seem that much more different from me just because they've been, practicing for 10 or 15 years, and they're doing all this stuff, and why shouldn't I do it? Everybody feels that way, actually. So, I guess part of what we're doing is letting the elephants trot in the room. Now, you may not feel this way yet, because you don't know the phases of the path yet. But it happens. We go to retreats, and there are teachings for people who've done certain practices, and there are other teachings for people who've done other practices, because we want to meet you where you are as best we can. That's really a very, very important principle. And so one of the reasons of being acquainted with the phases of the path is to be able to get a sense of where you are realistically and where you can go also realistically. So that's a very important reason for talking about the stages of the path. There are stages. It's not all mixed up. There's some choices involved. In particular, we have designed this to be quite flexible within a sense that it will actually offer a trajectory and a movement through processes that will work for you, that will actually allow you to grow. And that's why we do these practices. Now, if you want to grow by way of developing a certain capacity for relaxation, that's one thing. Attention can help you do that. If you want to grow by, you feel like you walk around in a shell to some degree, and you want to open your heart, somehow that calls you. Sometimes we meet people who, just feel that that's where they are in their own development. Then a cultivation of compassion is a good thing. And it will be very important to have some capacity for attention in order to develop compassion. As you start to cultivate, let's say, attention in order to relax, or compassion in order to open your heart, or equanimity, which is what we're talking about nowadays quite a bit on our Teaching Tuesdays, as a way to create a foundation actually for compassion, sooner or later you find that you have habit patterns that don't just go away because you now have a different orientation. And it doesn't mean that your orientation isn't deep and genuine. It just means that you're confronting a truth about human beings, including you, including me, including everybody. We can call them patterns, habit patterns. We have, some people, they have certain gestures. We all have certain gestures. We have certain ways of talking. But we also have certain ways of being. We're a certain way that we, usually as children, often for very good reason, we learn to be in the world a certain way. Maybe we grew up in a situation where distraction was actually very helpful. We had to constantly be monitoring what was going on. And so we never developed the skill of just sitting. And now we want to. Or maybe we grew up in a circumstance where for one reason or other, or any of a million reasons, we had a kind of guard-all shield around our heart. And now we're pressing up against that, and we realize that it's a limitation. And we want to see what we can do. Or maybe we're just always uptight. We're always thinking about what other people are thinking when they look at us. We can't even feel our own feelings. So, even if you start because you want to relax, it may be, and you may or not want to take your path in this way, but sooner or later, you bump up against yourself. And you bump up against your own patterns of behavior, your own emotional patterns, your own way in which you connect or don't connect with people and things around you. And often these are sources of great pain, actually, because you start to see that this is really a limiting factor on your good potential and your possibility of enjoying life and so on. And so that's when practice becomes challenging in a very particular way, and also fruitful in a very, very particular way. And that's important to know ahead of time. It's one of the reasons we gather in community. It's one of the reasons we try to support our practice with intellectual knowledge so that it makes sense to you. When something makes sense, you're usually a little more willing to put up with it. If it didn't make sense to you that it was a good thing to fill cavities in your teeth, dentists would all be broke, right? We don't like it, but we understand. Most of us, some people refuse medical care, but mostly we understand that this is a necessity. So similarly, if we can understand something about practice, it just helps us go through the challenges that come up. Are you turning toward me because you want to say something? Oh, not yet. Okay. Is it making sense so far? Good. can boil it down to this. Your practice can be the greatest support of your life. It really can be. It can also be the greatest challenge of your life. And those two things are not at all contradictory. Now, the level at which you want to engage in practice is something that's very personal to everyone. You know, you may want to just kind of want to see, maybe, don't know, see. A lot of people pick it up, drop it, pick it up, drop it. What we're interested in is when you're ready to drop it, why? That's something going to be very interesting. People say, oh, I don't want to, I'm too busy. Watch it. When you find yourself saying you're too busy, think again. Because when you're too busy, that means you have other priorities. So at least make that conscious. Yeah, I have other priorities. I don't have time to sit doing nothing. Okay, what are your priorities? Fine, that's very fine. Start where you are. Start where you are, as Pema Chodron says. You can hardly do otherwise. Start where you are. Well, where I am is, I think practice is probably a good idea, but I don't have time. I have too much else to do. Okay, what are you doing? What exactly are you doing? And what values are you serving in what you do? Is your busyness serving your values? It's just something for you to look at. Are you living, we sat in alignment, right? The concept of alignment is very, very important, actually, for any human being. Can you identify what your values are? It's also part of practice. Is it a value of yours, let's say, to be helpful to others? Is it a value of yours just to listen to your spouse or your family? Is it a value of yours to cultivate patience, difficult as that may be? Is it a value of yours to think about the whole trajectory of your life and what you would like to have accomplished by the time your life comes to an end? Have you thought about that? It's a good thing to think about. And thinking about all of these things are actually central to the first phase of practice, which has as its goal developing a daily practice. Developing a daily practice is not a small thing because we have so many pulls on our lives. Every day, that means you're giving your practice some priority. Something else will get less priority. It may be your so-called downtime, free time, that you have to use differently. And it's often, and it takes time. I want to say that it's not a small thing as a way of saying there's kind of a lot of permission in that. I don't know if you're looking for permission. But, there's a lot of encouragement to you to be kind to yourself, patient with yourself. There are all kinds of reasons why people drop practice and pick it up. And all of those reasons, in some sense, are good reasons, in the sense that they are actually expressions of something that's going on with you. Maybe you're too anxious to sit down with yourself. Would be part of developing a daily practice to see what comes in the way between you and a daily practice. It's not a small thing. Maybe there's too much anxiety. Maybe you feel too much pressure. Maybe you really are overburdened with responsibilities. Maybe there's some inner wound that, comes up when you sit and you can't sit with it. That's totally legitimate. What we're not saying is you got to force yourself. If you want to come through the door of Dawn Mountain, you must force yourself, starting tonight, sit every single day, okay? We're not saying that, but people often hear that. So I did say it in that, hopefully, sarcastic, slightly, charmingly sarcastic way, right? Because people do hear that. And people will say, oh, why haven't I seen you? So, oh, I can't practice tonight. I didn't practice, so I'm not coming. Okay? I teach a 1 credit practice, what do we call it? Practice, contemplative practicum, thank you, at Rice. So Rice students, they're all really smart and really busy, and they're trying to figure out how to do a regular practice in the midst of being, in school. And it's definitely not easy. And we spend, as Claire knows, we spend a lot of time talking about that. And what I'm saying is, and we talk about, well, what are your values? Do you want to be somebody who's running like a chicken with your head off all the time? Oh, you mean I could think about that? I get to think about that and think that, no, actually, I would prefer not, if I could help it. Do you want to be kind to yourself? It's not a skill a lot of people have, actually. Some people take on practice as a kind of self, punishment might be too strong, but, a kind of, I'm just going to tie myself down and get rid of all these bad habits and pretend they don't exist anymore. Okay, we're not talking about that either. Some people say, I can't come to Dawn Mountain because I feel so, I feel lousy. Not health-wise, but I just, I'm not happy. This is when we welcome you. Now, people need privacy, people need time. When you need to be by yourself, there's also wisdom in that. Everybody is different. People do take time away. That's fine. What I'm really trying to say is that part of developing a daily practice is being in touch with yourself and learning about what it is that prevents you from doing that. Because whatever it is that prevents you from a daily practice is also probably preventing you from other things that you might value. Maybe it's preventing you from quality family time. Maybe it's preventing you from just being able to relax and being happy with being who you are, whoever you are. So it is the phase of developing a daily practice is already a practice, is what I want to say. And in phase 1, that is something that we emphasize. It's not something, as practitioners, as lifelong or long-time practitioners, we are always going back and examining why we practice and what it is that is preventing our practice from deepening. Let's say if you have a daily practice, then it becomes, so how can I deepen my practice? How can I bring it more into my life? Those are aspects that stay with us lifelong as practitioners. So, point is that at phase 1, as you are orienting toward developing a daily practice, you are setting in motion habits that are important, whatever your level of practice is. If you've been practicing for 5, 10, 15, 20, 35, 40 years, you want to keep it fresh, right? I'm still looking into how can I deepen my practice? How can I make it more, present in my daily activities? It's a big challenge. It's a wonderful challenge because it means you have, the opportunity, as long as you live, to increasingly live in true alignment with your true values. And that's an art, right? How many of us do that? It's not easy. And as practitioners, what we get to recognize is it's not easy. And so we don't have to pretend that we're doing it and get all uptight and put on shields of propriety and, behave in some special way so that everybody can see that we're practitioners. That's like totally not what we want to do. It's the opposite of what we want to do. But it happens. And it happens partly because it is very easy to confuse the results of practice with practice itself. So let's say I decide I want to be a more compassionate person. And I learn some of the meditations on love. And I think about how everybody wants to be happy. And I sit in meditation and oh yeah, I'm starting to feel this love thing. I get it. Everybody wants to be happy. And you do. And you have some experience of genuinely maybe wishing that other people be happy. And then one day in meditation, it like just descends on you and your heart opens and you, oh, this is what it's like. This is what these loving people that I've never understood, feel like. Wow. And so the next time you sit down, what happens? Of course, you try to recreate that experience. And not only that, as you walk about your daily life, you try to behave lovingly and compassionately without checking to see whether you're actually feeling that way. So you develop a false personality on top of the false one that you already have. And when you sit in meditation, you start to feel, and this happens and I'm talking about it because it will happen, okay? It happens to everybody. It's kind of it's a part of the process. But at least if we know about it, we can recognize it. And you sit down and you try to reduplicate that feeling of compassion that magically, mysteriously descended the day before. And it doesn't happen. And you think, oh, I'm a terrible meditator. I can't do this. And instead of looking at how you're actually feeling, which is maybe hurt or angry or tired or whatever you're feeling, instead of taking an interest in what's actually going on, you try to get back to that great feeling that you had last week. Now a month since you've had it. Now it's been a couple of years.
3 decades exactly.
And that's actually not what practice is. You can't control what occurs. What you have to do, Ken MacLeod has a great phrase for it. He has a wonderful discussion of this, actually, is that part of being a practitioner is learning to accept what comes in practice. That is tough. You're totally distracted. That's what's happening. That's just what's happening. It's not good or bad or anything. It's what's happening. You're feeling really angry. What are they talking all this compassion rot again? I just want to tell so-and-so off. I'm feeling really bitter about. So practice is not about putting on a mask or a new personality. It's really not. And you will find yourself possibly doing just that. So now you know that that's part of the process. And at least you don't support yourself into, oh, here I am trying to, pretend that something is happening instead of noticing that something else is happening. And this is where the big challenge of practice comes, where the rubber meets the road, or as we say more traditionally, the challenge of really making a connection between the teaching and you. And that connection happens through the intelligence of self-awareness. And one thing that happens if you do sit every day, whether you feel like it or not, because I guarantee you won't feel like it every day. If you are just waiting for the perfect moment when you think that your practice is going to go well because you're not too upset right now and you're not too hungry and, you're trying to control it. You don't want to sit down unless you're going to have, quote, a good practice. If you're a runner, doing any kind of sport, what would happen if you only practiced on days when you felt like it? When you felt like you could run well? Well, you wouldn't get very far, would you? It's same with meditation. It's actually part of what the challenge of daily practice is, that you learn that you will just sit there no matter what. And that's part of giving up on having some particular thing happen when you sit. Now, we can't pretend that we don't all want something particular to happen when we sit. Of course you do. You want to become calmer, let's say. And you know what? Over time, you will. That's the fruition of practice. So we need to be very, very clear that the intention that brings you to practice, I'm too distracted, and what you actually do in practice, a lot of which will be observing your own distraction, is different from the fruit of practice, which is when you actually can sit a little bit longer than you could before. You actually can relax a little more than you could before. And I think anybody in the room who's been practicing for some time will tell you that yes, that does happen. Your practice will bear fruit. And bearing fruit is different from forcing yourself into some particular state or not recognizing that something is going on which is not what you're after. Your distraction, your feeling of maybe indifference toward other beings when you're trying to cultivate compassion. All these people, too many. Great scene if you have, and anybody still watches Jesus Christ Superstar? But there's this great, great scene where they're all kind of crawling after, Christ. And they're just, and he sings, I don't know, do you remember he sings something about, I don't remember the lyrics anymore, but it's basically like, this is too much, it's just too much, all these people wanting, right? So in the process of your cultivating compassion, you may start to feel that way. Yeah. And great, you get to see that about yourself, because it's probably always been true, you just haven't let yourself in to your own courtyard, your own inner courtyard. And what we do as practitioners is we want to enter our inner courtyard. That is where the flowers grow, truly. That is where the fresh stream rises. So you can see already that even the simple thing of, sounds simple, developing a stable daily practice actually means you're meeting yourself in a lot of different ways. It's not a small thing. And so we have named it actually as the goal of the first phase of practice. That's phase 1, when you have actually had a stable practice, meaning that you've done some practice. We're not talking about length of sessions, but some practice on a daily basis, for 6, 8, 12 months. And it's really becoming, some people do then still depart from it, but that's a big step. It's an important step. And it's one that we absolutely recommend that you orient towards in your practice. Oh, excellent. Great. Shall we see if we have questions, and then we can have a break, and then we could go through the actual curriculum? Okay. So before we go, we turn to the actual curriculum and look over it, and then later we'll break out into some groups. Do you have questions just based on what I said? Yes, Gary?
There's 5 minutes.
We have 5 minutes, okay, for this moment. Yes, John?
Do we have a microphone?
So what is the difference between daily practice and practicing daily?
I don't see a difference. Do you?
Okay.
Is there some difference that you have in mind?
Well, practicing daily is not hard, but because I know that it's okay when I sit, that sometimes I may read a book, or some other times I may actually do the Sunday foundation practice, and other
Uh-huh.
times I may look at Justin TV, but I skip around so much.
I see.
I start thinking that, am I really doing the daily practice?
I see. Oh, that's a really great point, John. In addition to dailiness, there is also sequence. And that's what we're going to talk about next. That's a good point. Still, the habit that you're developing of doing something on a daily basis is a very powerful and positive habit. Yes. Do you mind?
So we're talking about the four main stages of the path. How do
Can-
you know that you accomplish each of these?
Oh.
stages? And I'm not asking because I know you emphasize not being tied to an outcome, but how
Right.
do you know that you're ready to move from phase 1 to phase 2?
We've outlined it fairly clearly here, and I'll read you the. Can I do that? Maybe we'll do that. That'll be the next thing we talk about. There's pretty clear phases, and they're actually sometime overlapping phases. So you might be still in the process of developing a daily practice while you're also beginning to learn more, let's say, about the path, and let's say about Buddhist practice, which is phase 2. So they're not rigid. We'll talk about that.
It's not based on evaluation as much as
Yeah.
a familiarity with certain practices and having done certain practices. It's not, tying you into a lie detector and trying to evaluate who you are. It's not based on anything like that. It's really just, are you familiar with doing certain practices in an easy kind of way? Maybe we should take a break, though, for the CD.
Okay. Okay, let's have a little break. We have some snacks, and then we'll come back. If you have questions, keep them in mind, and we'll come to that.